Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, images of Africa are flooding Twitter. Stunning scenes of beauty, innovation, and achievement. What does the world need to know about your Africa? The hashtag #TheAfrica the media never shows you has exploded on Twitter. So our digital team actually did a little bit of investigation. This is our heat map that we came up with. So starting at the end of June, the Twitter handle actually exploded, starting in South Africa. These are the heaviest users. So South Africa, followed by Kenya, Uganda, and then Senegal, the heaviest users here across the continent of Africa. How many people have used that hashtag? How many times has it been used? More than 100,000 times. It's still going strong. Now, Malika Bilal is our digital producer. She's out today. Dan Ming is in. Dan,
so
what are you seeing?
We asked people, Femi, about misconceptions of the continent, and Josh wrote in, he said, poverty, corruption, diseases, and wars, that's all the media is interested in covering. Thank God for social media. And then we got sent a selfie from Blue Martian. He said, I send people this photo and they ask, when did you leave Uganda? So we want to hear from everybody at home. Keep sending us these selfies and tweet us with the hashtag AJStream.
So here to tell us more about the Africa that you don't normally see, I'm joined by the President of the Republic of Mauritius, Amina Gureb Fakim. Madam President, congratulations on your presidency. Have you got used to being president yet?
Well, it takes a bit of getting used to, I must confess.
Now, you're part of an elite group of heads of state in Africa. There only have been 3 African female heads of state. Do you feel like you have a certain amount of responsibility that you have to carry?
It's 1 of 4, actually.
Yes, of course.
Yes, it's 1 of 4. Well, I think the most important message that has come across, I think, with my appointment has been, yes, women can do it, and women in Africa can do it. And I think through this exercise, we have been able to say that women have been able to go through the glass ceiling, and it's happening in Africa.
The diversity in Mauritius is amazing. We're going to show you some pictures of Mauritius, but from our online community, Dan, what do you have for Madam President?
We had a tweet, and I thought I'd pose this to you, Madam President. Sarah wrote in, she said, Africans come in all ethnic backgrounds. It's not just blacks. And I wanted you to talk about this. So Mauritius, as we know, is a very diverse country. Could you talk about that? What does that mean to you?
Mauritius, precisely, we have a very diverse population. We're only 1.2 million people. We live in a surface area of just over 2,000 square kilometers. But I think what we have shown to the world is that it can happen. Religious tolerance, people living together from different ethnic background, living safely, living in peace and harmony. And I can quite safely say that our strength, our diversity is our strength.
How do you make it work, Madam President, in Mauritius? How do you make that diversity work? Because there's so many languages are spoken, so many cultures are all mixed up there together. How do you make that work?
Yes. Well, I think education has a very important role to play, and our literacy rate exceeds 92%. I think it's one of the highest in Africa, and girls also given equal opportunity. And we have a free healthcare system as well. We have free transport for kids to go to school. So all these, I think, add towards getting used to this very important notion of culture, diversity, and we have made it our motto, and all the politicians have done the same thing, is to strengthen the social fabric. And so living together, keep on propping the message that we're all different, but we all have one common destiny, and that destiny, of course, is through the Mauritian population, Mauritian people.
There's a headline that I love reading. This is on Global Voices here. This headline says, Africa celebrates renowned scientist Amina Gureb Fakim as Mauritius' first female president. I know that science is so important to you. If you pointed to somewhere in the continent where you think, okay, there are going to be some amazing innovations, science and technology is really going to explode from this region of Africa, where would you tell us about?
Well, people increasingly talk about Africa, people talk about the North and the South. I am convinced that the difference between the North and the South is the science gap. And to be able to make a difference, to be able to actually empower the youth, because Africa is producing every year 11 million youth who are actually reaching the job market.
Yes.
And it is only through empowering the students, the youth of our continent, that we will be able to make a big difference on the continent. And of course, this goes through creation of job, and of course, going through very high-tech entities like biotechnology, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And this is happening. This is happening, of course, in Southern Africa. It's happening in Mauritius. And increasingly, we are going through a lot of innovative projects which are going to take Africa that level higher in terms of job creation, in terms of earnings as well.
I'm actually on your Twitter page, Madam President, here, and there's a wonderful story that you just tweeted out today. It's about the invention by Burkinabe and Burundian student scientists could save thousands from malaria. Are you actually sitting at home and then you're tweeting, or office, tweeting out science stories as well as running the Republic of Mauritius?
Yes, I have maintained that touch, the science touch, because as I said, this is what will make a difference in Africa. But the story that you have just tweeted, that I have just tweeted rather, is something very important, because it is translating traditional knowledge into powerful tools, powerful products that will make a difference on the continent. And this is again where the issue of traditional knowledge, which Africa is very rich in, is going to make a difference. We mustn't forget that traditional medicine has been at the basis of modern medicine, and Africa has got a fantastic biodiversity which still has not revealed all its secrets. And that was also part of my past life in addressing this need, translating this academic knowledge into a business. And it is also happening right now in Africa, and it's an enterprise that I'm creating because I'm a strong believer that empowering entrepreneurship through science and technology with the youth, I think we have a game changer here.
Madam President Amina Garib Fakim of the Republic of Mauritius, you are a game changer. It's been wonderful having you on the program. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Burundi doesn't often make it onto the international news agenda, and when it does, it's usually because of civil war, forced displacement, or petulant presidents. But that isn't what Burundi is for me. It's a wonderful country with stunning landscapes and warm, caring people. I admit that it can be difficult to acknowledge that beauty while so many are still suffering. But it's so important that we, not just the media, but all of us, celebrate those positives and go beyond the headlines to tell the whole story.
All right, so we had Madam President of the Republic of Mauritius on the program. Now we are joined by one of the most influential people in the world, that's according to Time magazine. Joining us from Kenya, we have the acclaimed author and journalist Vinnie Van Gogh. Vinnie Van Gogh, most influential person, it's lovely to have you here. One of the things that you're doing right now is you're traveling around Africa, working on a book, talking about that travel experience. If you were going to give us a little preview, where would you take us? What would you tell us?
Oh gosh, it's been an incredible 2 months. I'm now sitting on a balcony looking at my home city, Nairobi, in the middle of the lights. I just got back 2 days ago from Accra.
Yes.
I've been to Lagos, I've been to Johannesburg. I tell you what, Femi, I've been traveling the continent for nearly 14 years. I moved back. I was working in Kenya and in the US, and I moved back 3 years ago here permanently. And I felt, I've been working with young writers and young talent for years, and I just felt this new generation, a critical mass has been reached. I no longer know all the writers, you no longer know all the venues. There's new theater, there's new art, everywhere is exploding, and you can't at any point know what's going on in a major city on the continent from any casual knowledge of it. Lagos is really exciting right now. It's changed so much. Every few months I go, the place is unrecognizable. There's so much going on in there.
All right, tell us one thing. You can't just say Vinnie Van Gogh. Lagos is so exciting. There's so much going on. Tell us one thing. Just give us one thing, one little example.
Freedom Park. Freedom Park. Live music at Freedom Park.
Nice. All right, Dan.
So, Vinnie Van Gogh, we've been getting
It's a
pictures
lovely,
sent to
Freedom
us
Park
from
have
all over
an
Africa.
Event.
And I wanted to share one picture with you. This is from Botswana. It's from Lillian, and she shows this picture of a Botswanan project, African Children's Stories Written by African Children. Can you speak to that? Can you speak to the importance of having media produced in your own country and region on children?
We live in a globalized world. My nephews, my students, children here still watch the same globalized media on the same social media networks, and so they see themselves refracted through the eyes of how those global media organizations present them. It's a really dangerous thing. I think one of the most important things for our generation is to build our own media and to be the people responsible for first building the way we see ourselves to ourselves. I'm less interested in the idea of us putting ourselves always in the eyes of and ears of how other people are choosing to see us. At this time of crazy growth and in creation and invention, I think it's very, very important that we spend more time listening to ourselves and telling ourselves our own stories.
Right. So, Vinnie Van Gogh, if you could recommend one book for our international audience to read, what would be that one book?
Dust by Yvonne Orr. It was my favorite novel last year.
Nice. Didn't even
There's a
hesitate.
Kenyan writer called Yvonne Orr who wrote a great novel called Dust.
All right. So,
It's
Vinnie
an
Van Gogh.
epic. You will cry, you will laugh, you will cry again, you will laugh, you will love.
I feel like you've just written the background notes on the back of that novel. All right, Vinnie Van Gogh Wanaina, writer from Kenya, he says one of the favorite things that he loves to do is enjoy a cocktail in the Nairobi evening. Go enjoy that cocktail. Thank you, Vinnie Van Gogh.
I would see myself as very grounded in my field of research. In 10 years' time, I think I'll see myself having contributed much to science and development and to policy and practice in general. And I think there's a bright future, for young scientists, especially on this continent.
We're joined now by the arts curator and founder of an exhibit of Libyan art called Melting Pot. That's currently going on in London. Najla El Ejeli is with us. Najla, this idea of curating Libyan art, it started during the Libyan Revolution. What were you thinking? How did you decide to do this at that particular point?
Well, it started after the Libyan Revolution. I went back to Libya and I became aware of all the beauty of Libyan art. And I decided it's about time the rest of the world sees what Libyan art and culture is about, and not for it just to be constricted to Libya and in Libya itself. And I started with the first exhibition in London at the Arab Bridge Centre. And I curated it. I was a bit scared at first, but then the feedback, and we had so much positive outcome of it, and that I found myself, sort of promoting Libyan art to the rest of the world.
So Najla, you can't just go wandering around Libya picking up art pieces. How do you do this?
That's how I do it.
Okay.
No, I go, it's all done. When I first went, I just saw some pieces hung on the Libya, in the Tripoli International Fair, and I spoke with the artist. And then it's a very small community of artists. And I just started knocking on people's doors, more or less. And from there, the story started. And it just opened up a whole world for me. I found so much about Libya that I never knew. The beauty of the country, the beauty of its arts, of its culture. And more or less, I just kept knocking on doors and actually using social media, contacting people and sending them messages. And
so some of the artwork,
they believe
Najla,
me.
it's very precious arts of work. So how do you pick up a precious piece of artwork in a country where, let's just say, living conditions are quite challenging? How do you get that piece of art back and exhibit it? Yeah, outside of the country.
I become very creative doing this. It becomes it's a mission. So I work with what I have. Instead of shipping the artwork, I have my husband who goes a lot to Tripoli, and so he goes and he gets work in rolls, and I transport it into an airplane as a roll, and then I bring it here and I sort of sort it out here, or contact the artist, and if they're doing digital work, and it's all printed digitally. So you have to become creative in order to bring it back. It's and it's become a mission of mine now to just seek it out and to make the world aware of it.
Dan.
So Najla, we got a tweet here from Faciledes. He says, there's a rich and diverse culture in Africa the rest of the world could learn. So picking up on that, what the rest of the world could learn, can you say why you decided to exhibit this work of Libyan artists in London?
To know the real human story of what's going on. The media just shows Libya and all of the ugliness of war and hate and division, and the human story is missed. And I believe through the arts, the human story comes out, and people relate more to visual things, and to understand that there is a culture, that there is, there are people out there who use other tools of what they want, of their needs, and instead of just guns and fighting.
If you want to check out some of Najla's work, if you're in London in the next few days, you'll be able to see the Melting Point, and that's an exhibit going on in London.
Melting pot.
Melting Pot. Najla El Ajeli, thank you for being part of this conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
It has various tribes, cultures, and all these intertwined to make what Africa is, a very great, beautiful land.
Our designers have been able to showcase at some of the most recognized world fashion events, and have also designed for some of the most famous and influential people. Nigeria is home to hundreds of languages and cultures, and this allows designers to be very versatile and unique in terms of colors and patterns. This is what differentiates our fashion with the rest of the world, and probably not what the media will show you.
So Dan, so far on this program, we've had a President of Mauritius, we've had a writer.
Check.
An art curator.
Very impressive.
So we've got one more space, very precious time. Who would we give that time to? Tatenda Mbuti is a comedian, he's a filmmaker. He's working on his first feature film in Zimbabwe. It's called Zim High. Precious time on this very special day. Tatenda, have we used the time well?
Of course, yes. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So listen, every African country, there's an identity that we identify with as a home country. So for instance, me as a Nigerian, Nigerians are, I would say, they're brilliant, they're confident, they're all over the place. That's how I would sort of characterize some of the characteristics of a Nigerian. Good at conversation, extrovert. Zimbabweans, Tatenda, what would you say about Zimbabweans?
I'd say Zimbabweans are extremely intelligent, very kind and warm, very creative, and very inventive at making things work. I think there's a lot of passion as well. I think we pride ourselves on our families a lot, and there's Zimbabweans of all different shades and colors, Chinese, white, you name it, we've got it.
Got a picture here on my laptop. This is you at the Oscar ceremony. I'm just going to point out where you are here. You're just here, which is looking very dapper. How did you get to be on the stage at the Oscars in Hollywood?
Well, I entered a competition where they asked, what I would contribute to the future of film. So it's a 30-second video. I wrote an essay, and it was selected out of thousands of other students.
And the topic of the essay.
Privilege.
Tell us about the topic of the essay.
So yeah, the essay was basically saying how I wanted to help create empathy through entertainment, and how film, and usually the Academy Award winner, sort of reflects the fears and the hopes of society at that time.
Dan.
So Tatenda, we got a tweet here from Rosebell. I want to read it to you. She says, about media representation, she said, African youth have no complex story, either succeeding in hubs or hopeless crossing the Mediterranean. So I want to get your take on this. I know that you're working on a project that tries to complicate this idea that people have of African youth. Can you talk about it?
Yeah, definitely. So Zimbabwe is the first African teen movie ever that isn't about Ebola, Boko Haram, child soldiers, Somalian pirates, people with AK-47. It's just about kids trying to fulfill their dreams in this Zimbabwean high school setting. And I'm making it because I think it's very important for young people to see themselves in films in positions of heroism and be able to identify. And right now I'm crowdfunding it on Indiegogo, so if people want to look it up, they can go check out Zim High on Indiegogo and help change cinema history, because this is the first time anything like this has ever been done.
So I looked at the Indiegogo site, and the video for it is actually really, really funny. Dan and I were cracking up as we were watching it. Is it going to be a comedy? Or are you just making people laugh all the way to the bank to give you the money?
Well, I guess it's a bit of both. It's definitely a comedy, but it really does touch on some themes of identity and trying to find your place in growing up in a culture where there's so many influences. For example, in Africa, a lot of places used to be colonies, and there's a lot of people moving in and out, and it's about trying to hold on to your dreams while being faced with all these peer, society, and parental pressures. Yeah, so it's funny, but it's got some heart to it as well.
So one of the things we wanted to do today was to talk about and celebrate the continent of Africa. If we were going to do that for Zimbabwe, which is often in the news, how would we celebrate Zimbabwe in particular?
That's a great question. I think Zimbabwe, it has some of the most beautiful natural landmarks on Earth, like Victoria Falls. But more than just that, I think that people just really have this warmth and this energy. Like if you talk to anyone who's ever hung out with a Zimbabwean, you know that they're a good time and that they're supportive.
Right.
There's just really good values there. So I think celebrating the people is definitely important.
Dan, what do you have for us?
So we have a comment here from Zara. She says, hearing your own story told by your own people is essential to end the othering of the self. So yes to self-produced media. I think she would be very excited about what you're working on, Tatenda.
Thank you. I agree with that as well, because I think that's what entertainment does. It makes you feel for someone, it puts yourself in someone else's shoes, and so you see them as more than just an other or an object. You see them as a person, and I think that's a big reason why we love media from the West so much. You know, that's the power of story, and so I think it's high time that Africa starts telling its own stories and spreading those stories around the world so that people can see us as who we are.
So you've also worked in the States, and because you have to, as a filmmaker, as a director, innovator, you went to the States, you've worked in the States. The idea of what you're bringing to broader media as an African filmmaker, what's the secret sauce that you're adding?
So for me, I think it's just that very specific point of view where you've lived in multiple worlds, and for me, I've seen all sorts of things. Like in my rural home, I've seen like dust and thatch houses, but then there's also within the same country really nice houses and buildings, and so I think it's creating a connection between different styles of life and proving that there's a lot more in common than is not.
All right,
between
Tatenda,
African people and people
you've
around.
just done that for us. Thank you so much. Tatenda Najla Binyavanga, and Madam President of the Republic of Mauritius, thank you for joining us on this very special edition of The Stream. Thanks so much.
I feel that Afro-pessimism, or thinking that nothing good ever comes out of the continent, is a problem even amongst Africans themselves. So we need to educate ourselves and change our own notions about the continent.
I'm a 17-year-old Ghanaian, and I am one of many Africans that are tired of the negative portrayal of Africa via the media.
People will be surprised to hear that 6 of the world's 10 fastest growing economies were in sub-Saharan Africa.
We don't live in trees, we don't swing from vines. Actually, we have concrete jungles too.